Hello, it's Mark Littlewood from the Business of Software, and we are live for the first Boss Hangout of the year. And what a hangout we have. Hope everybody that was fortunate enough to have a break had a very nice break, and I hope that you're all geared up and ready to go for 2018. We certainly are. Just a reminder that we have a couple of great conferences coming up. We have a Business Software Conference Europe, that's May 21-22 in London. It's going to be fabulous. And Business Software US, the 12th, which is the 1st to the 3rd of October 2018. But we're not really here to talk about that. I think you would leave very quickly. I'd like to introduce our guest today. Now, Andrus is joining us from Tallinn, and let's see if we can patch him in like magic. No, we can't. Hello.
Hey, hello. Good morning, good evening.
Good evening, good morning. People are sitting here watching around the world. I know Scott is watching us from Australia, so God knows what time it is down there today, Scott. But happy, and thank you for not sending me mean emails about the cricket and the Ashes, and I hope you enjoy it. Tell me about where you are, Andrus, because it looks like you are sitting on a swing.
I am on a swing. I'm in a co-working space where I reside in Tallinn, wintry Estonia.
Wow. So welcome. You gave a really, really great talk under very trying circumstances at Business of Software Europe last year. You were at the event the year before, and you put in a pitch for a lightning talk, which we took you up on because it was really fascinating. And the day before you were due to give it, one of the other speakers unfortunately had to pull out. And so I was like, who might be able to do something that could fill some space and take that extra time? And I remember you said one of the most entertaining things I've heard from someone for a long time, which was, I said, have you got something that prepared that could do a longer talk? And you said that as you came from the Ukraine and you have Russia as a neighbor, you are prepared for everything at all times.
Yeah, so Estonia though, not Ukraine, but I think in both countries, people are always ready for anything if they live in a country which is run by Vladimir Putin.
Excellent, excellent. Could you just, so the talk was about the 4 phases of SaaS marketing, and you had a very warlike analogy, which was fascinating. Can you give us a little overview of what that was about before we kind of dive into some of the questions?
Sure, happy to. And before I do that, I just like to apologize, I suppose, for using a military metaphor in this talk. I don't actually think the customers are the enemy or on this other side. Or they should be shot at or kind of do something nasty with. It's just I haven't been able to find a better metaphor for my journey in scaling a SaaS marketing team. And as soon as I find a better metaphor, I will change the metaphor. But for now, it's going to be a military one.
Okay, answers on a postcard. We shall give a prize of at least a nice Boss coffee mug. For anyone that comes up with the right metaphor. So feel free to chuck your ideas in. And as you're watching, by the way, at home, if you've got questions, please throw them in either by clicking the Ask a Question button underneath you. It's like there. Wow, I've got very big fingers. Or just make a comment in the... Well, you could even spell yours correctly, but you can comment there and see what's going on. So, tell us about the 4 phases, what you see them as being.
Okay, yeah. So the 4 phases which I went through as we were kind of scaling or growing Pipedrive from 0 to later more than 50,000 paid customers, where at first there was a stage of hand-to-hand combat. We thought we had a product. We weren't sure because we didn't have any customers, but we had some beta users and we had Rolodexes. So the first stage of hand-to-hand combat was really about asking, threatening, begging, and tricking our friends and business acquaintances into using the product. The aim wasn't to work with kind of scalable channels because it would be too early for that. Then we exited the private beta phase with, I think, 18 or 20 paid customers. They were paying, they were happy, we were off to the races. We were ready for the next phase of marketing, which was then, like in the lingo of this particular talk, it was scalable weapons, or if in military terms, it's a machine gun that you use to mow down many people at once. In marketing terms, it's a channel which allows you to get more than one customer at the same time. So then we got busy building out channels, and don't know if we have time or reason to go into the particulars of building the channels which we did at Pipedrive, but anyway, the next phase after building, we had some success in building out the channels, which started bringing in predictable and a healthy number of customers. And we had kind of started to also grow the team, but we very quickly realized that as you get some channels to work, you need more hands on the deck to actually, again, in the lingo of this talk, to man the machine guns. The machines don't shoot themselves. So we started what I refer to the talk as channel mobilization, bringing on lots of people fast. And of course, you still have to do continue channel development as well, but then you also then bring in people to help you faster and better. And as we were busy growing the team and this kind of general mobilization phase, I learned that as a kind of team lead, head of marketing, that as we added people, we didn't necessarily move faster. In fact, we started to move slower because the lanes were not carved out very well. People started to bump into each other. We did some things too many times. Some things we should have done, we didn't do because nobody had thought about it. And maybe smarter people would start it earlier, but then it was when I really shifted from being first. I was the first scale of hand-to-hand combat is first phase of hand-to-hand combat. You're almost like a salesperson. In the second phase of scalable channels or machine guns, you are a marketer. In the third phase, you are basically an HR person or recruiter. And in the
this is a really interesting way of looking at it.
And then in the fourth phase, you kind of like a Bond villain. Like you don't really operate any weapons or channels yourself. You don't only recruit anymore, but you kind of design systems, processes, workflows in order to have a team where people know what they need to do. They do what they want to do, and then they have no blocks or barricades on the way. And I think the metaphor I used in the talk was then you become a Bond villain. You just you sit on the lap and you purr the cat, and then you have systems so well designed that if you want to take on a new country or in Bond movies, a new planet, you just press a button and some amount of resources goes to do its thing. So that was, I guess, that was the talk in a nutshell.
Great. Thank you. I'm just making a note there. I guess sort of I'd like to come back to channels because that's always a kind of a question that people find interesting. But just sort of focusing on some of the things that we were talking about in that talk. This is one of the questions that we had kind of coming in, which is, I hope you should see a question come up somewhere.
Yeah.
Great. So the question is, what works really well at the first stage that's a disaster, I suppose, at the fourth stage? Are there things that are very unique to those specific stages, or are you kind of is the scale and the escalation a process where you're kind of reflecting your role, or in the fourth phase, are you still chasing after some of the things that you would do in hand-to-hand combat, but just less? You don't have the ability to scale. How does it work in your view?
Gotcha. So the the phases don't completely replace each other as we went through it. In my experience, they build on top of each other. So phase was about getting customer feedback, getting intimate with the customer. And you can't, or you shouldn't, completely stop that once you go to scale of channel. You should still have some amount of resources in close contact with the customer.
Yeah, yeah.
And then so they kind of stack on top of each other. As you start hiring, you still need to work on channels. As you start kind of designing the organization and processes, you still need to add people. You still need to build channels, and you still need to talk to customers. You just kind of your focus only changes.
Gotcha. And so it's your personal focus, and you're layering in people underneath. Which did you find the most challenging? Because this was you've done some startup-y stuff before, but this is, Pipedrive is by any measure a rocket ship. It's grown, it's scaled very quickly. So, and it must be quite an interesting experience going through that. Because you probably weren't doing the Bond villain weapons of mass destruction stuff earlier in your career. How did you personally think about the processes and the stages and the steps, and how much of that for you was about learning new ways of thinking and going about things?
So if the question is, how do you think about these things, then the answer would be not enough. Most correct answer. Again, I think using a military term, there's a thing called a fog of war, where there's bullets flying in different directions and you're not really sure where's the enemy, where's your own troops. So I think if you're in a fast-paced team, a fast-paced startup, that's constant fog of war. And also, nobody tells you that, hey, this phase is now over, start looking at the next phase. It's blindingly obvious in hindsight that as you're in this day-to-day marketing work, the mistake I made was was kind of hanging on in a stage too long. So you have started hiring way early, maybe not way early, but like notably earlier than I did. Should have started process design notably earlier. Again, I think once you've gone through that, it's easier to spot the right moment. But as you're going from zero to that scale for the first time, like being in the same company, that was hard.
Yeah. How did you support yourself in that? I mean, this is a slightly personal or more personal question, but in terms of people that are watching, we all go through these phases of growth in a business where you can kind of feel out of your depth to a degree, or well, what do we do? Did you kind of carve out time, or was this really a fog of war thing that you're only consciously making sense of it in hindsight? So, and what would you do differently?
When I think in a well-functioning team, and Pipedrive was a well-functioning team, you don't have the luxury to stay in the wrong phase or in the wrong mindset for too long. So then just life forces you to think if you don't do it yourself. So I think some of it was just kind of you just notice that you need to change something, and then you start changing. I also had a very good mentor. I could just speak to every now and then, and just get her experience on doing something similar in another company. And I think one thing which I got into the habit of doing many years ago is just talking to others who are doing a similar thing, not directly competing on a regular basis. That I find the best way to learn. I mean, you can do that in a conference such as Business Software, which I think is ideal.
I think that's I would certainly recommend that as a route for anybody considering this sort of stuff, to be honest.
Yeah. It's an unbiased opinion, and they are
utterly unbiased and completely objective. Yeah.
But in these odd months when there's no boss conference happening anywhere in the world, I just get on the phone with somebody who I've met maybe at POS or other events and just have an hour-long conversation. And I think that's the best in terms of learnings per minute, the learnings per hour. It's reading or listening to podcasts by a ratio of 10:1, I think, because
wow.
So I think
because you get some real data, and you tend to have slightly more honest and open conversations when you're in that kind of one-to-one environment as well.
And you can steer it to the thing which interests you exactly. So you don't always find the post which is top of your mind right now, but it's super easy to then kind of steer the conversation to where you want it to go.
Cool. Okay. Well, I'd like to talk a little bit about channels and things that worked for you at different phases. But just to reiterate, I don't think we've had as quiet and polite an audience. No one said anything yet. So if you have questions, ask them, and we'll try and answer them and sort them out. But
or maybe just the two of us here. Then we just can have to make crack jokes and.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But so channels, you're a SaaS product. Tell us a little bit about the product so that people can get a sense of what you're selling, how you're selling it, who your customers are, and then if we can back into that, some stuff about the channels and the different channels that you're using and have used. I think that would be really interesting for people.
And then do you mean the product of Pipedrive or the product that I'm currently thinking about?
So I think Pipedrive first, because then we've got some sort of, there's a sort of solid case study, I suppose. But and then let's talk about what you're up to next afterwards. But in terms of channels, I mean, one of the things I'm particularly interested in understanding is with things like social media and those types of channel, are those, were those effective? Are there ways that you could use them effectively that were, different, interesting, relevant to what is generating traffic for you, and what was generating trials and then sales, assuming that you've got kind of traffic to your site, trials and then paid users as three of your kind of metrics.
So that's a multifaceted question. I will start from so the first channel worked for Pipedrive really, and Pipedrive is a simple sales tool which just gets it organized. It's dead intuitive, so and also at the beginning we couldn't afford a sales team, so it was self-service. So the job of marketing then was just to drive people to the website who can then self-sign up and then self-onboard themselves and then start paying for it. We did have a support team to support and catch questions and help if needed, but it was really a simple funnel in that sense. The first channel which drove us more than 100 customers at the time was an AppSumo promotion. So
interesting.
As we exited the first kind of hand-to-hand combat phase and started to, we knew we had a product, we just needed to find more users for it. Then AppSumo was the first thing we did, which I think it doubled our customer base basically, just overnight. And then another thing which we did early on, which was driving a third of signups for a while, was Google Chrome Web Store kind of simple connection. Or
wow!
It was at the time when Google Chrome Web Store had just launched, and there were not too many other SaaS tools on it. So we really benefited from the timing of this platform.
This is a really interesting thing, because if someone goes off and copies what you're doing there, they're going to be disappointed. It's a conversation I've had a few times. One of I don't know if you know a guy called Jason Cohen, who CEO, founder of WP Engine, and his first company, a smart bet, or one of his first companies, was built completely off the back of AdWords, Google AdWords, and he was advertising on Google using Google AdWords when it was really new for cents. The cost of the AdWords was absolutely nothing because no one was using them. And people ask him how he would go about doing that again today, and he's like, I wouldn't, because we wouldn't even bid for those AdWords now because they're $50 plus, not cents. So there are always these interesting things that can drive traffic because you get into the right place at the right time and you're quite lucky, but it's then quite tough to replicate that.
Yeah, and yeah, there's always something. There's always a new platform emerging, either a free or a paid platform.
Yes.
Last week I heard somebody say that Instagram stories, the kind of cost per acquisition there is notably lower than regular Instagram or regular Facebook or anything else. So right now, like this week, Instagram stories is the thing to focus on.
Yeah.
Last month, a month ago, it was something else. In 2 months, it's going to be something else. But there's always something out there which is just launching, and the CPMs and the CPCs have put up to the demand hasn't pushed up the prices to where they should be in the long run.
Did you invest a lot of time in emerging channels that died?
Yes and no. So
whatever Google comes up with, that they do something, they get really excited about it, and then they give up after a couple of years and shut it down, or new things that just fizzle.
Yeah, we invested in, I think, LinkedIn had a product called LinkedIn Lead Accelerator, which was something we used and then didn't use with too much success, and then they shut it down. I think there's been other ad formats and the ways we've tried and just failed with, which I think is fine. I think it's good to have a process for failing and experimenting new channels. As we like the first channels which we really got working were content and SEO, because in the early days that was almost like a necessity, not a choice, because we couldn't afford anything else than my 2 hands typing on a keyboard. But then as we kind of had raised a bit of funding and had gotten a couple of channels to work, then we had a conscious process of testing new channels and failing as fast as possible. And then just continuing this process, because we knew that there was also always going to be the next Google Chrome Web Store somewhere out there, or the next AdWords in 2002 out there somewhere.
So you have enough resource at that point to invest something in those new channels, on the hope, but measure and monitor and see how they go. What does your marketing dashboard look like? What are the key metrics that you were measuring, in terms of this bit, the kind of demand generation and finding new people? What were the things that you worried about or didn't worry about? You just celebrated. Who knows?
Whenever I looked at the dashboard, it was always a reason to celebrate. I wish. And again, here I have to speak in past tense, because I'm not the person who looks at this dashboard or influences the dashboard anymore. But we in the beginning phases, we were mostly interested, or I was most interested in trials, so signups. And then as we got more mature, and this didn't take too long, we started looking at new paying customers by channel as the main driver. So we looked at trials by source and new paying customers by source as the key metrics. Then as we evolved further, we added engagement metrics to the dashboard. So in SaaS tool, you have many people sign up who just look at the product and then log out and never come back. So then we had the second week login as the next thing, and then you can look at the same thing by channel.
Yeah.
And then as we all evolved further, we then also added the revenue metrics there. So what channels drive the most revenue? So we can just kind of you can, I think, map the progression or evolution of our thinking and the company to the metrics we were looking at. We never looked at traffic too much, and I think that we were quite business, our metrics, I think, were always quite focused quite close to the business results.
Yes. Do you think people should use more KPIs or fewer?
So I think by definition, KPI like key would suggest that it's fewer is better. Funny thing. Did you know that the word priority or priorities only existed in singular up until 1850s?
Really?
Yeah. That's fascinating. So priorities by definition of 1840s didn't exist. Only priority, a singular.
Singular. Wow. That's very interesting. Well, we live in a much more complicated world now. Everything's this time it's different, right? And multiple priorities. I'd be really interested, and I know this is something that people have kind of poked around in one way or another previously, talk about AppSumo. So you said that was one of your big successes early on in terms of getting people on board. Did you have to do a deal that did you have to discount to a point that those customers were less profitable? Or, what was I hear two things about AppSumo, and you can get an extraordinary number of users very quickly, but you also run the risk of getting the wrong kind of users. Mm-hmm. Because if people are buying something because it's discounted, they're less profitable. Was that your?
So AppSumo customers were definitely they're definitely not profitable. So it was for us. We just needed the paid users, and we needed them outside our home base of Tallinn, Estonia. So they got us customers in the heart of Silicon Valley and US, which was our leap. Which was the leap we needed to make.
Okay.
So even if we lost or didn't make money on them, it was still good because AppSumo users, I think, tend to be more early adoptery. True, they are price sensitive, but they also like early adoptery crowd. So if some amount of them fall in love with the product, you get it back multiple times. I think same is true for Product Hunt these days. So you get really the early adoptery kind of people who you need if you want to start growing virally.
Very interesting.
Yeah,
and I don't know. You may not have monitored it. Presumably some of those very early adopters that start to grow become more interesting over time. But I hadn't really thought of it as an awareness thing. But what sort of discount level were you offering? Can you remember?
Ridiculous. I think you can still. First, our pricing when we launched was ridiculous. It was a way. It was very not very self-confident pricing. But it was like it's what you do when you enter the market. Like you learn. And we discounted that price ridiculously. So I think it was like something like 75 or 80% discount.
Wow. Okay.
Of ridiculously cheap prices for a good CRM tool.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. So no, that's really good because then that's one of the things that people ask me at events and on the side a lot is are things like AppSumo worth doing? And some people have had you've had a very good experience. I think having that qualified as that was a marketing exercise because it cost money. It wasn't sales. It wasn't profitable sales. So that makes perfect sense. But
can I then just add one more thing, quite universal and kind of it relates to channels that. We did a lot of experimentation early on at Pipedrive and also later on. But if I could turn back time, I would be slightly more focused with experimentation.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's only as an early stage company at the time who is in a field which is which doesn't need, which has high awareness. So CRM, everybody knows what CRM is. We didn't need to create the category. It was an existing category of products. If you're in that situation, I think there's only two things you should experiment around. One is getting recommendations, and there's not a lot you can do. You have to have a good product, and then you can build a referral program and build some triggers and kind of improve messaging and these sort of things. But definitely something to focus on early on, because that's the highest ROI thing you can do. And then the second thing, which we kind of did, but perhaps should have done more of, is worked on channels that build visibility or findability. So if you exist in a category which people already know, you know that you have some amount of people searching for you every day. You just need to be present where they're searching you, whether it's Google or App Store or Google Chrome Web Store or something else, and just make sure you do your thing, whether it's free channels or paid channels. You want to be listed on not just for every keyword, but almost every Google placement for these keywords, which kind of then dictate your channel strategy, if this makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Very interesting. Well, there's quite a few questions coming in now. I'm just trying to work out how because I'm keen to get through as many of them as we can. So, Scott, interesting question. Come back to that one. What strategies to use to? Can we go to engagement and churn? It's an interesting question. Thank you, Tabitha. I don't know where you're from, but thank you for the question. What suggestions do you have to increase engagement to prevent churn, or is that actually even the right question? I suppose engagement is a measure of how likely someone is to churn, but is there a different way of approaching the problem?
Yeah. So I think I think that's a very well phrased question, because the way to fight churn is like, you can't do anything really to fight churn. There's little you can do to address churn, but you can do things to get people more engaged with the product in the first place. And if you do the onboarding right, then you don't need to worry about churn that much. It's like almost like hopefully everybody has had their meal, but it's almost like if your feces smells or tastes bad, you can't fix it from that end. You have to then change the intake of your diet. Not the other end. And suggestions to improve engagement. Just I think, I mean, I wasn't, or we were massively successful there, so I don't have any.
So that's always the things you fail at that are more useful as learning opportunities for other people, Andrus. It's like, damn you for being perfect.
But we were constantly trying to get to the aha moment faster. So for users to experience value faster. Yeah. And the trick with a CRM tool is, I mean, maybe it's not mission impossible, but maybe it's very hard, because if the average sales cycle of your customers is 45 days, and if your trial is 30 days, they can't really fully experience the product during the trial.
Yes.
But you can then just create an illusion of aha moment faster. You can make it very easy to import data. You can make it very easy to see your sales process in a sales tool.
Very interesting. So thank you, Tabitha, for, again, great question. Related to that, this is an interesting, do you know Sim?
I do know Sim. We worked together at Skype back in the day.
There we go. Hi, Sim from Berlin. Do you ever test pushing users to take a demo with the sales team before letting them into the product? Sort of self-service.
I've never pushed for such tactics. I'm sure that they're useful in some cases, especially when you don't want to lead with pricing. But for our product, which was mostly self-service, we didn't really push that at all.
It's interesting. I mean, I've got a series of marketing automated emails that I'm getting from an event management company at the moment. And after the third one or something, I kind of clicked on the thing to actually see what they were offering. And it's, there's no everything about pricing just goes to a contact form and fill in your information and we'll get a salesperson to talk to you. And I'm just like, no, not ever. It's a very interesting area. Do you know what Seam is up to at the moment? What he's working on? Do you know what that question is? Do you know what that relates to in terms of?
I don't know it. I mean, I know what he's working on, but I think what he's working on is also some relatively self-servicing.
Right.
He's marketing Wire, which is a secure now business messaging chat tool. But yeah, I think it's like that tactic is best left for companies who have a very complex product or very very self-confident pricing.
Or I mean, I haven't seen that end well for a while actually. But we'll see. Seam, if you'd let us know a little bit more about the context there, maybe we can kind of fill that one out a bit more. But it is great. It is a great question. Thank you. So, getting back to marketing automation, but I'd like to finish on that. This is one that's always kind of comes up. How does the talent you need change as your business matures? And there's another one here. What strategies did you use to scale your marketing team? These are all, I guess, sort of pretty related in terms of how do you grow, and how do you? I mean, I suppose there's a few things here. As you go through different phases, you need different people, and as you recruit, you're bringing people into the organization, but you're also bringing people in the organization on, if that makes sense. What was your approach to getting the best people?
Mm-hmm. So I think what worked well for us was that we had the first 2-3 people, apart from myself, were full stack or kind of universalists. And then in the early days, you need to be able to handle many channels. And as you succeed or fail with a channel, you move on to the next thing, and you don't have a person for each function of marketing. So that really, I mean, the first hire apart from me was like a first very smart, and secondly also kind of multifaceted, multi-skilled. So we swapped different tasks between the two of us lots and lots of times. And then at certain, I think as you bring on your fourth or fifth person, then you start to need really specialization. You need somebody that has done that thing well, and they can't be a generalist because it would just take too long to learn something well. So I think the first specialist we brought aboard was a marketing analytics person who didn't do much else, but he was great at that. And then, of course, then the further you go, then as we evolved to the mobilization and kind of the final stage of marketing, which is like the 1 billion stage, then you need to bring on not just people who know one thing, but you need to bring on people who bring on people.
Yeah.
So I think your focus evolves with the evolution of the company.
Did you ever develop your own rules about hiring people? Are there certain things that would mean you would never hire someone, or what are the things that are clues to great hires as opposed to not great hires from your perspective? What patterns did you notice?
I think so. The only rule that worked for me was that look at past behavior, and success is not job titles and process. So look at the results rather than inputs. So that's a good, I think, way, both as on a one-on-one interview and as indications of success when you look at somebody's profile.
Yeah.
And maybe the trick which worked for me, but maybe could have worked earlier for me, was to get proper interviewing training before you start the avalanche of interviews. I think the first couple of years, I mean, I had done interviews before in my previous engagements, but not at scale. And when you join a company, then you need to bring on several people each month.
Mm-hmm.
Do maybe 10 or 15 interviews per week. You want to do the interview training before that. And I think I was maybe a year late with that particular training.
Interesting. Did you put barriers in front of potential employees at that stage? I mean, so one thing that a number of people have said is that by making it harder to get an interview, you get better people. There are so many easy ways of, and we'll come back to marketing automation in a minute, but there's so many ways of shoveling your CV round to 2,000 people, or put them on job boards or whatever it is. It's quite sort of keyword driven. It's quite sort of quite formulaic. Do you have a kind of drop us a note and send us this information so that you can see it's personalized? Did you do Skype interviews with people? Did you do, what was the sort of process that you worked out that worked, or was it much more traditional CVs, get some people in, see how they go?
Yeah, so I think the thing which worked for Pipedrive's marketing team, and I think other teams, is, or at least what I always added to marketing job specs was that they had explanation of why they think they are the best person for that role. And if it was left blank or generic, I sometimes glanced at the CV, but spent too much time on it. If they haven't taken the time to at least kind of look what we do and kind of imagine themselves in the role, and you have a choice in this. It's just sloppy. There's a chance that it's somebody who's very excited, so excited that they just couldn't wait to get the CV out. But there's a bigger chance that if somebody just sends their CV to 100 places, and I think almost everybody who we hired had spent some time on it, just imagining themselves in the position and then explaining why they would do a great job at that point.
Interesting. Okay, great. Well, look, we've got a bunch of other things kind of flying in here. I'm just trying to think. Marketing automation is something I would like to touch on. I think there's some really interesting stuff there. Go on, Arshad. Let's talk about this freemium model. What do you think of freemium? All packages should be paid after trial, but perhaps at a very low price point.
So I don't. I only have intellectual opinions on freemium because I've never employed. I mean, not never. But yeah, I think some businesses which I've been involved with had a freemium model, but I have experienced large success with freemium myself. I could intellectualize about freemium for on, but I just don't have any empiric.
Okay.
Unfortunately, can't answer that question.
Well, share your extremely prejudiced and uninformed view with Arshad then, just as a quick.
I'm in favor for it, but I see very good cases for not doing that in certain areas. So at Pipedrive, we discussed freemium very briefly every 6 months. Very briefly, because one person in the exec team was very much opposing freemium, so it wasn't very long discussions. But we came up every now and then. And
like, if you want to go work somewhere else, you can go and explore that maybe. Okay. So Arshad's come back on that. Do you think it maybe work better in B2C? I guess possibly. I mean, there are a lot of business to B2C propositions that use freemium in one way or another? I mean, I suppose it depends to a degree on what kind of two things, what kind of customers you have and what kind of requirement you have to scale and grow. If offering premium allows you to build a network of users, and it's almost an alternative thing to using AppSumo, for example, to get new users. Maybe that's one thing. But I mean, most people that I've spoken to, certainly in B2B, who've been doing freemium, are quite happy to drop it.
Yeah, and maybe like the one thing I would add is that it makes sense to do if you can find a way to bring on quality leads to use a free product, not just the low quality leads. Like Dropbox. I mean, some people who start to use it for free actually they can pay, they would afford to pay for it. But they're just kind of they find enough value in the free tool.
Yes.
So I think that's the one dimension I would keep in mind, that if there's a way to make sure that at least some of the people who come in through the freemium are not the kind of people who would never pay anyway, and who are maybe kind of never substantial enough to give you a substantial word of mouth benefits.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. Some quick ones to kind of knock out here. So Matt Pierce, any rules of thumb, magic ratios? Everyone wants a magic ratio or a golden silver bullet or something or other. There aren't any. It's just hard work, mate. Any rules of thumb, magic ratios? How many full-time equivalents per channel? How many channels running concurrently? This is about kind of cash burn and how do you kind of manage your marketing as you scale?
Mm-hmm.
Great question, Matt.
Yeah, good question. Many good topics in there. I think magic ratios I wouldn't know. I think, but channels you need. I think some channels are so specific that you need at least one full-time person per channel very fast, and some channels can grow to quite a big size before you need a full-time person on it. Like referrals, the channel where we didn't still have a full-time person when I left Pipedrive in September. So 6.5 years without a full-time person, just kind of running on almost an autopilot. How many channels running concurrently? But I think, but to the previous point, but then I think content.
Not all channels are equal.
Yeah, content very quickly needs full-time people and SEO, and also paid channels. The more you use them, they tend to get quite complex very fast. So you can't really scale paid channels if you don't have one person per channel. At least person per channel. Like you need one person for AdWords because it's quite complicated. You need one person for Facebook and Instagram because it can get quite complicated, etc.
Yeah. Another quick follow-up question there. Did you try techniques to convert trials to paid before the trials ended? The cash flow, spelt wrong there, you'd be fined, Matt. And I know Dwayne quite well, and it's a capital F, and he gets very irritated when he sees cash flow spelt like that. So slap wrist when I see you. They gave their telemarketing team an incentive to turn people to paid before the trial ended. Have you done things like that, or was most of your kind of onboarding and whatever automated?
I think we ran some experiments, but we never. It wasn't a priority ever. So, and the thing we did is shorten the trial from 30 days to 14 days.
Yeah.
Which I think had a slightly positive effect. So the positive effect is that you get your money 16 days earlier, but there's no longer term benefits from it.
Interesting.
And also to answer Matt's question from previous question about you asked about the revenue percentage as a marketing budget. So share of marketing budget from the revenues.
Yeah.
And I think Matt mentioned 10 to 15%. So Salesforce, which is not a startup anymore, invested 59% of revenues into marketing and sales last year. So I think it really depends on funding and growth phase and growth ambitions. So there's definitely no magic ratio there. Depends on how funded you are and.
Gotcha.
And
Sorry, I just pressed the button and I just zoomed out, and I had to then log in, which is why I think I'm on the other side of the screen now. I hope you didn't hear me swear. I literally pressed the button and it went reload. But luckily they've developed this system now, so you get back in without shutting the Hangout down, which is what happened the last time I did it. I missed that last bit. But okay, that's. Oh God, we're getting so many of these things flying in. Should we move to, because we haven't got a huge amount of time. Marketing automation, out funnel. Okay, so we're going to go this. We're going to pick up too many onboarding emails in the first 24 hours. And this is a sort of a step into marketing automation, I guess. Sim,
all right.
okay.
I think easy answer would be 2, I think. But like everything, I think here as well, you can answer. It depends on the product. If the product is something which maybe the shelf life is 6 months, 6 hours, then you can send more emails.
Yeah. Okay. It depends. Notice you've had quite a lot of speaking engagements. So, marketing automation tools. Do you use marketing automation? If so, which ones worked well for you? Thank you, Arshad.
Yeah, good question. So the first tool which really benefited Pipedrive was an email tool called Vero, which was, I think, the first tool which made it easy to build event-based email flows, triggered email flows. So in the first year or two of Pipedrive's existence, our developers had to code marketing emails, which wasn't ideal. And then they installed Vero, and I could then change, copy, A/B test flows, etc. By myself. By now, you have many good tools. I think Drip is one of the leaders here. Drift is doing good things, and they just added email, I think, yesterday.
Oh, did they? Right. Yeah.
So there's, I think the email capability they added isn't comparable to Drip, but I think all the marketing tools tend to gravitate to do everything over time.
Yeah, I was going to say there's this sort of everyone wants to do more and more. You look at kind of HubSpot, and it started off as a kind of content management system, and then they launched a CRM and this, that, and the other. And there seems to be kind of two approaches here. One is really focus on one thing that you're great at and work out how to integrate and work with other tools effectively. And then there's the other one, which is, okay, we've got one great thing, let's add something else and add something else. And that doesn't always have the same value for the end user, I guess. But marketing automation is a massive, what's your take on who's doing interesting things? What's the market doing? And what are the kind of great things about it, and also what are the downsides? Because I can think of a few, to be honest.
Yeah, I think the downside is that it's that you can do everything with marketing automation, and then because of endless amount of options, many marketers just opt for just spamming everybody a lot. So it's I think too easy to over automate marketing, and I think the thing which is not necessarily the fault of marketers, but I think just it's just kind of the way that the tools have been built by various companies and not well integratable. Yeah. It's hard to do marketing which is not spammy, because then you need to actually put in the hours which you don't have. Yeah,
that's interesting. That's interesting. So that, I suppose, in a way, kind of moves us towards. So you went through this phase or process of growing growing Pipedrive. And when you spoke in June, you were head of marketing there, and there was, you were kind of at the back of your mind, you obviously knew you were kind of heading off at that stage. So you sort of left later in the summer. What are you up to?
I'm good. Great question. Great question.
There we go, Leon. I don't know if Leon's someone you've paid to come in and ask that question.
Leon is a nickname of my mom, actually, who just comes in. Sorry, Leon. So I had this idea about a year and a half ago that about the missing functionality of Pipedrive. So adding marketing capabilities to Pipedrive, and this wasn't the kind of a core feature of sales team. So Pipedrive would never build it, or Pipedrive wants to be the platform which is the hub for many different tools. They don't want to build everything themselves, which I think makes a lot of sense for the company. But I've had this marketing idea for the last year and a half, and then in December I thought it's time to go and explore this a bit more. So I left my left a job which I like very much, and then jumped into the unknown, and I'm now working on a marketing automation idea. Marketing. I think that's a fair way to put it.
Cool. So how will you contribute to the great good of humanity by making marketing automation less spammy?
That sounds very good, but
it's one of the challenges of marketing automation. It just makes everything so easy. And I think, a lot of people have this sort of challenge of they confuse the ease by which you can make something happen and the value that your end users or your customers or your prospects or whatever lists you are talking to get done.
So the untapped area, or there's a lot of potential and knowledge and possibilities in the systems which are currently in use in companies already, but they are currently not visible easily for marketers, and therefore they're not used in marketing. So marketers, because they use a sales tool and the marketing tool, and they're separate and maybe not tightly integrated, it's hard for a marketer before they send out the newsletter to remove people from the email list who have recently bought or who are close to the purchase in the buying cycle. You have to export data in one place and import in another place. So it's easier to send the same message for everybody, which then ends up in not really spam, but sometimes also spam, but then just
kind of irrelevant, isn't it? So don't tell me why I should be buying something that I've already bought.
Yeah. So I think what I want to do is not going to think and add new marketing features, but just make it easier for companies to use data which already exists in their sales tool or a support tool, and just make it easy to make marketing more relevant, less spammy, more effective. Big vision, and I have yet to write the first line of code, but then I think there's something in there worth enough, exciting enough to jump into this and then see where this takes me.
Is there anything that people can help you with? Is there any? Do you have a sort of kind of watch what's going on, get on the mailing list type thing, or is there anything that you want to share with people? If you've got a URL or something for signups, put it in on the right hand side, because you may actually just be sort of too early in the process. It sounds like this is quite early.
I just kind of typed the URL here, but so I'm still doing customer development work. So if anybody's out there who is thinking about or working with marketing automation systems, especially if they use Pipedrive, I would love to chat. I'm not selling anything, just trying to understand what the challenges people have and how could a tool help.
Yeah, interesting. Great. I think, gosh, we've got a minute. I'm not sure we're going to get through many other questions there. I mean, I think we could carry on talking for ages, actually. There's so many things to kind of cover, but want to try and kind of keep this to an hour. So I think we should sort of wrap up. Say thank you very much indeed for coming and getting involved. Is there anything that you want to leave us with as a a passing?
As a passing, so first, thank you for listening. It was thank you for inviting first, Mark. It was good to chat with you.
It was great. I mean, really, I think sort of classic. You've been to a couple of the conferences before, kind of came along as an attendee, and it's really interesting to see, even in that time, how quickly kind of Pipedrive had worked, and it's fascinating to kind of learn from people that have been through it and know what it's like, so know how hard it is.
yeah, and it's a good community. I've been in touch with many people like who I met at Boss, so it's good to good contacts you make there. So first, Mark, thank you for inviting. Then thank you for listening. Good questions. If I can leave with a thought, it is maybe just back to the earlier topic of kind of 4 phases of marketing that that no one tells you what's the right phase. What's the right phase you should be in? But you have to kind of actively then ask what phase am I in, and then change the focus of your days and weeks accordingly, and not wait for life to push this new phase to you, but actively seek time to go to the next phase. Yeah,
it's really interesting. The thing that I hadn't picked up first time, and then even reviewing it and looking at it again, was that those 4 phases are a very powerful kind of image, and it's a good model, but that your role as sales, marketing, recruiter, bond filler, that's really where we all want to be.
And then you go back to square one. So now I'm back to hand-to-hand combat.
Exactly. And learn a few techniques and tricks on the way as well. So no, that's great. Thank you so much to everybody for watching. Some brilliant questions. If anybody has any follow-ups or questions, feel free to drop me a note at business. That's my email address, and I can put you in touch with Andrus if you've got anything specific that you want to pick up. Thank you very much for listening. It's been a really, really interesting first hangout of the year, and looking forward to the next one, which is on the 31st of January. It's with a guy called Jason Eckenroth, who was another speaker at Boss Europe alongside Andrus.
Let me just plug this talk. John, his talk was excellent. If there's a link, I would just recommend everybody watch the talk. It was a personal story.
It was fabulous, wasn't it? I mean, very different topic, different kind of conversation to Andrus's, but I think the really interesting, Jason founded, built, organically grew a business to multiple tens of millions of dollars revenue, sold it, extremely, it was an extremely sort of positive event financially for Jason. And then he realized that he wasn't very happy. And sort of like that, it's that kind of classic founder thing, what was driving him. He spent quite a lot of time thinking about what he would have done differently. And I think one of the interesting things we asked him was that someone said, do you regret selling your business? And I'd spoken to him before, so I think his sort of philosophy is you can't regret things. It's no point. But so I don't regret things, so I don't regret it. But I would definitely do things differently next time. But really, really very powerful talk as well. So look forward to that on the 31st of January, and to plenty more. Andrus, thank you so much. You stay online while we go offline, and we'll just wrap up. But thank you for watching, and see you soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.